is a little bit unnerving playing Ophicleide in an orchestra like that, because you have all these string players who are all Juilliard people and have beautiful instruments, and all these wind players who are just amazing and can make the most beautiful sounds out of your instrument. And there I am honking along on Ophicleide, making burp noises, you know.
Yeah, seriously.
But that's what the instrument is. It was meant to be like that. It's meant to add a little bit of edge and a little bit of buzz to that orchestra, and it really works. And that's what you're missing when you play that repertoire on tuba or euphonium, as is sometimes done. It just doesn't have that buzziness that the composers knew what they were getting when they wrote that stuff. So that's a lot of fun.
My fiance, a flute player, and her mother would probably 100% agree that the brass instruments are adding burping noises into a beautiful sound in an orchestra. That was very accurate to what I think they would say as well.
Yeah. Well, wasn't in Symphonie Fantastique that the Dies Irae section where that's quoted, wasn't that originally written for Ophicleide? I feel like I've heard a recording where it's played on Ophicleide in the past, and it's like a totally different sinister sound than it is otherwise.
Well, I have a theory about that, and this is backed up by almost no research at all. But so the original Symphonie Fantastique is for Ophicleide and Serpent on that part. And then later on, he revised it to be two Ophicleides. Now, of course, these days it's usually played on two tubas or something like that. But yeah, it is a completely different sound. And, you know, the tune there is the Dies Irae. It's the plain chant, right?
Right.
And the Serpent and Ophicleide, you often see pictures of priests with serpents and ophicleides. And the reason you see those is because those instruments were used in accompanying chant in the church.
Right, yeah.
And the reason they use those instruments is because they sounded a lot like the human voice and would just sort of blend in and would keep the singers on pitch without making a contribution to the sound that didn't sound like a singer.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm having flashbacks to music history class with like drawings of singers with two serpent players on each side.
Absolutely. And so my theory about why Berlioz used those instruments at that point is it was like a twisted version of what you would see in the church, right? It's okay, this is the plain chant in church, but we're going to really juice it up and make it funky, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic effect. And when you play that on tuba, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
It sounds good and maybe better in tune, but it doesn't have that buzziness and that edge that's really exciting when you hear it done properly. Right. You know, like the beginning of the Mozart Requiem, you know, has those three chords where the trombones come in, and on modern trombone, you hear those and they're beautiful. Bum, bum, bum. Please edit out my singing, but when you hear that on period trombones doing that with the small bore instruments and they're trying to play to the right volume, it's you know, it's a completely different sound. It's like, wow, that is so cool. I've never heard that in that way before. And that's what's exciting to me about playing this music on the original instruments is it you know, our instruments have developed in such a way that you know, the instruments we're playing today are intended for 20th century repertoire. And they're intended to be played over a 100-piece concert band or a 100-piece orchestra. And while they work for playing chamber music or playing the earlier music for smaller orchestras and stuff like that, it's not the same effect, not at all. And it, to me, is really special when you hear this music played the way that the composer intended it to be played. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason why we use the term historically informed these days is because we don't know exactly what it sounded like, right? This is the domain of musicologists who go back and read the treatises in the original Italian and try to figure out, you know, what these players did and how it worked. But you can learn a lot just from the instruments, you know. So if you have an instrument that's an original 19th century instrument, if you have an instrument that's patterned very closely after an original 17th century trombone, just the way it plays can tell you a lot about the way the players would have used it, you know.